I've done a television interview almost every week for the past month, and somewhere in the middle of the last one, I caught myself doing something that I've been doing for 30 years without ever really seeing it. I was doing the reporter's job for him. He would ask a question, I would answer it. And then, before he could glance down at his notes, I'd already bridged to the next topic and started answering that one too. See, I know how to control an interview. I know how to direct it exactly where I want it to go. I've spent enough time and years in front of the camera and the microphone that steering a conversation it's just muscle memory for me. But when I got honest about what was driving it, the answer was a bit less flattering than mastery. It was dead air. You see, in broadcast, dead air is the cardinal sin. Just that moment that I left silent for you in this podcast was so painful for me. Now, expand that to 3 seconds of silence on the radio, and the engineer assumes that the transmitter went down. Somebody's phone rings, somebody's career flashes before their eyes. I mean, that's how serious dead air is. See, I was trained for decades to treat silence as an emergency, and that training has followed me out of the studio. It followed me into meetings. It followed me to my own kitchen table. It follows me into the stage, where the single hardest thing I do, harder than the opening, harder than the Q&A, is to stop talking and just stand there. I have to work at it deliberately every single time I speak. I know the pause works. I teach the pause, and everything in my body still screams, the transmitter went down. Say something fast. Welcome to the Presence Lab. I'm Dale Dixon, and this show exists for one reason: to help you communicate with authority when the pressure is real and the room is hard. Today, we are talking about the pause. And I want to be precise about which silence we're studying, because the internet is overrun with the other kind. The staring contest, the power move, the hold out until they crack routine that your uncle picked up at a used car lot. That version treats the person across the table as a mark. We're after the version backed by hard research, the one that makes you think better in the moment and builds connection that outlasts the meeting. You're going to hear why silence feels so dangerous to high performers, what's actually happening in your nervous system in those 3 empty seconds. And then I'm going to give you 3 specific pauses you can put to work this week: the set pause, the catch pause, and the land pause. And because this is a skill you build with reps, I have built a companion for this one. It's called the Pause Field Guide. It's a 2-page tool with all 3 pauses, the drill I'm going to describe later, and a 1-week practice plan. It's free at daledixon.me/pause. Grab it early because, ironically, this is an episode you're going to want to act on quickly. So, let's name the belief we're taking apart today, because most of us are carrying it and nobody remembers signing up for it. Silence is awkward and weak. That's the belief. Somewhere along the way, though, we decided that a leader who commands the room is a leader who fills the room. Airtime equals authority. Having the answer means having it instantly. If there's a gap in the conversation, the person in charge is supposed to close it, the way a good host refills your glass before you notice it's empty. And the modern pace has made it so much worse. We now treat silence in a conversation the way we treat the spinning wheel on Netflix. Something must be broken. Somebody reboot the router. 2 seconds of nothing, and we're reaching for words the way we reach for the remote. Doesn't work that way. So here's the problem with that belief. It's measurably peer-reviewed wrong. A team of researchers led by Jared Curran at MIT's Sloan School published a study in the Journal of Applied Psychology looking at what silence actually does in a negotiation. They tracked silent pauses of at least 3 seconds, and they went in testing 2 competing theories. Here's theory number 1. Silence works because it intimidates the other person, rattles them, makes them crack. That's the version we all absorbed from sales training and cop shows. Theory 2, silence works because it gives the person who pauses room to actually think. The intimidation theory lost. The researchers went looking for evidence that pausing rattled the other side or soured the relationship, and the evidence never showed up. What they found instead is that pausing shifted the pauser into more deliberate, reflective thinking. People who paused stopped treating the conversation as a fixed pie and started spotting options that worked for both sides. In one of the studies, simply instructing negotiators to use silence produced better outcomes than instructing them to go problem solve. 3 seconds of quiet beat the strategy session. Listen to that again, because it flips the entire script. The pause is a gift you give your own brain, and the trap-setting crowd has it exactly backwards. Both people in the room end up better off when one of them goes quiet, which means the whole silence trap genre, stay quiet until they crack, first one to speak loses, is teaching a real tool for the wrong job. Our job is connection that lasts after we leave the room. The pause, used honestly, serves exactly that. So, where does the fill the air reflex actually cost us? Let's walk through a few rooms, scenarios, see if you recognize yourself in any of them, because, tell you what, I recognize myself in all of them. First, let's talk about the Zoom call. Someone asks you a question and you start answering before they finished asking it. Manners don't have anything to do with this. On video, silence feels twice as long and half as survivable, and every gap feels like an invitation for someone else to take the floor. You know why? Because we're conditioned. And when you think about the streaming services, YouTube, we all have seconds in this space. Just as if you're watching this on YouTube, we've got seconds in this space to hold your attention before you swipe to the next thing or click to the next thing. So we're accustomed to that. We're conditioned to it. So you jump and you answer the question you predicted instead of the question that they asked during this Zoom call. How about the salary conversation? You finally work up the nerve to make your ask. You say the number, and then, in the silence that follows, you keep talking. You explain the number. You justify the number. You offer a discount on the number before anyone has objected to it. Every sentence after the ask is you negotiating against yourself, and the other party didn't even have to show up for it. So, how about the hard feedback, scenario number 3. You've got one difficult sentence to deliver to someone on your team. Just one. But the silence before it feels cruel, and the silence after it feels unbearable. So you wrap that one sentence in 14 sentences of cushioning, and by the time you're done, the person across from you is wondering whether they've been corrected or nominated for an award. How about the board Q&A? A hard question hits, a really hard one. And instead of taking a beat, you start talking immediately, hoping a thought will show up somewhere around the second sentence. Sometimes one does, often it doesn't. And now you're narrating your own search process out loud to the exact people you most want to impress. My personal favorite, because I've done it in front of witnesses. You ask your team a question, the room goes quiet for 4 seconds, and then you answer it yourself. And then we wonder later why nobody speaks up in our meetings. Because we trained them. We taught the whole room that every silence belongs to us. Now, we're going to get underneath it, because here's where this show is different from a communication tips list. The fill reflex is a state problem, wearing a skill problems name tag. You already own the ability to stay quiet. Toddlers own it well. Some toddlers. What you're missing in the moment is access to it. And access is a nervous system question. Here's what's happening. When the room goes quiet and the attention is on you, your nervous system reads that silence as exposure. You're being evaluated, and there's nothing covering you. Activation rises, heart rate ticks up, and your system starts looking for the fastest available exit from that discomfort. Talking is the exit. Words are the escape hatch. Filling the air in that moment is flight behavior in a business casual outfit. So, layer the executive conditioning on top of that. We've been taught that our job is to command the room, to be the one with the answers, to direct the conversation. Silence, we were told, accomplishes none of that. So the moment a gap opens, two forces hit at once: a nervous system trying to escape discomfort and an identity trying to prove it belongs in the chair. No wonder the words come pouring out. Which brings us to the line I want you to keep from this episode. An unregulated speaker can't pause. They can only fill. Sit with the difference. The pause and the fill can look identical from the outside for the first half second, but one is a choice and the other is a compulsion. A regulated speaker stops talking because the moment calls for space. An unregulated speaker keeps talking because their body refuses to stop. The pause becomes available the moment the state is handled. That ordering is the whole game. It's why every tactic-first approach to silence eventually collapses under pressure. You can't out-technique your own nervous system. So here's the diagnostic question, and I want you to actually ask it the next time you feel yourself rushing to close a gap. The silence is uncomfortable. Fine. Who are you filling it for? The honest answer, almost every time, is you. The person across the table is perfectly fine. They're thinking. They might be having their most productive 4 seconds of the whole meeting. The discomfort is yours. The escape is yours. And when we fill their thinking time to soothe our own activation, we're serving ourselves and calling it leadership. Whew, that stings me. Quick aside before we get to the tools. If this show is earning its place in your week, would you do me a favor and hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening? It takes 4 seconds, which conveniently is exactly the length of a pause we're about to train. And while you're in there, go ahead and hit the like. Really appreciate that. Still takes just 4 seconds. Now, moving on. Before the tools, I want to give you a picture to hang all of this on. Think about a piece of sheet music. Scattered all through it, between the notes, there are these little symbols called rests. And here's the thing about a rest. It is not the absence of music. Nobody looks at a rest and thinks the composer ran out of ideas. The rest is written into the score on purpose with a precise length because the silence is doing musical work. The rest is what makes the next note hit. Play every note with no rests and you get something, but it sure isn't music. It's just noise. Now, some of you have been waiting to spring a question on me, so I'm going to get there first. Dale, you can talk fast. This whole show got rebuilt around an episode about talking fast. Are you seriously telling us to slow down? No. And this is the part I need you to hear. Some of the most electric music ever written is fast. Fast tempo, full of rests. The rests are the punctuation inside the pace. That's exactly what the pause is for. A fast talker. Keep your tempo, write rests into your score. A fast talker with pauses sounds brilliant and in command. A fast talker without pauses sounds like he's being chased. The difference between those two speakers is the rests. All right, 3 tools. Each one is a rest written into a specific spot in the score. So before, during, and after. First, the set pause. This one comes before the moment. When to use it? Right before the sentence that matters most. The decision, the difficult feedback, the number, and just as often, the good news and the big point, because this tool works both directions. And we're going to get there in a second. The move. Before the sentence leaves your mouth, take one slow breath. Let the exhale finish. Then speak. You're pausing to regulate so the sentence comes out of a settled body instead of a spinning one. The gravitas is a side effect. And here's a detail worth knowing. A slow exhale runs about 3 seconds, which means before you've said a single word, you've already crossed the threshold the MIT team used to define an extended pause. The settling and the thinking arrive together on the same breath. So I wrote about this very moment in Sweating Bullets. Mac, the executive at the center of that book, starts turning his high-pressure disasters around before he ever changes his words. He learns to notice his own breath, his own physiology ahead of the sentence. The breath comes first because the state comes first. The set pause is that lesson compressed into 3 seconds you can use in any conference room. Now, the other direction, because this is where most people leave money on the table. A pause before a sentence is the closest thing spoken language has to bold type. When you go quiet right before a line, the room hears an announcement you never had to make. Here comes the thing to remember. You've said, here's the most important thing you can take from our conversation, without spending a single word on it. And that works on the best news of someone's year just as powerfully as it works on the hard thing. Quiet beat, then the board approved it. All of it. The pause is what turns information into a moment. Same tool, same breath, and now the biggest point of your keynote or the best day of someone's career gets the frame it deserves. What it sounds like on the hard side? Your VP of Ops needs to hear that her project is being shut down. The old you walks in already talking, filling the hallway, filling the doorway, filling the first 90 seconds with weather and preamble. The new you sits down, takes the breath, lets the exhale land, and says, I want to talk about the Meridian Project, and I'm going to be direct with you. The silence before that sentence didn't make it colder. It made it steadier. She can feel the difference, even if she couldn't name it. Second, the catch pause. This one comes during, specifically right after their question and before your answer. When to use it? Anytime you're asked a question that matters. Board Q&A, media interview, your kid asking you something real at the kitchen table. Anywhere, your reflex is to start talking before the question mark has finished echoing. The move? Let the question fully land. Count a silent beat, 2 if you can. Then answer the question that was actually asked instead of the one you predicted halfway through. This is the exact window the MIT researchers measured. Those 3 seconds are where the shift happens. Reflex, handing the wheel to actual thought. And remember which instruction won in their data? Pause beat, problem solve. Your silence is doing strategy work. You're buying time to be smart, and being smart is the whole job. While we're here, let's retire the fake versions of this move because you've heard them all and so has everyone else. That's a great question. I'm so glad you asked that. Repeating the question back in slow motion like you're translating it from the original Latin. Every one of those is a fill in a trench coat, and the room knows it. Worse, great question quietly grades every other question in the meeting, and the people who asked those questions did the math before you finished the sentence. The honest version needs 0 flattery and 0 stall. The question lands, you go quiet, you think, you answer. That sequence with nothing added pays the question more respect than any compliment you could hand it. And if a naked pause still feels impossible right now, here are your training wheels. 4 words. Give me a second. Then take the second. That line asks for exactly what you need and then requires you to deliver on it. Saying it out loud puts your discipline on the record in front of witnesses, which is precisely why it builds the muscle. And when the senior person in the room says it, something bigger happens. You just licensed thinking for everybody. Around here, the room learns. Taking a beat is allowed. That's culture setting. And it's worth way more than another fast answer or patronizing someone with, "That's a great question." Because most of us treat every question like a game show buzzer. Fastest answer wins. Except nobody's handing out prizes for velocity in a boardroom. The prize goes to the answer that holds up on Thursday, 3 days after the meeting, when someone's actually trying to act on it. Third, the land pause. This one comes after. It's the rest that follows your most important sentence, and for most of us, it's the hardest one of the three. When to use it? Right after your key sentence. The ask, the decision, the one line you actually need them to remember. Here's the move. Say the sentence, then stop. Fully stop. Your job in the next 3 seconds is subtraction. The softener stays in your head. The second version of the same point stays in your head. The escape hatch stays closed. The sentence needs room to do its work, and every word you add after takes that room away. Back to the salary conversation. Based on the scope of this role and what I've delivered this year, I'm asking for 140. That's right. I just stopped and I gave it silence. That's the whole play. The silence after that sentence is not a malfunction. It's the sentence still working. And I know exactly what your body is going to want to do in that silence because mine wants it too. It's going to want to add, "But I'm flexible." It's going to want to add, "I know budgets are tight." Every one of those add-ons is your nervous system trying to escape, dressed up as reasonableness. Here's what makes this pause safe to hold, straight from the research. When the MIT team went hunting for relationship damage, did the counterpart feel worse about the process, worse about the person who went quiet? They came up empty. Your silence after the ask reads as steadiness. Better, it hands the other side the same 3 seconds of thinking room you've been using. And in the data, that shared thinking room is where the outcomes got bigger for both sides. You go quiet, they think better. Everybody wins. That's a strange shape for a power move, which is your clue that it was never a power move. I love the great paradox. So here's the reframe that lets you hold it. The goal is connection that lasts after you leave the room. And what lasts is the sentence you gave room to breathe. The land pause is you trusting your own sentence enough to let it stand there without a bodyguard. Here's our drill. Tolerance for silence is a physical capacity, and you build it the way you build any physical capacity. Reps at low stakes before you need it at high stakes. So here's the drill, and it's in the field guide. This week, once a day, in a conversation where nothing is on the line, place one deliberate 3-second pause. 3 seconds, by the way, straight out of the study. You're training to the exact number in the data. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. Coffee with a colleague, dinner at home. Someone asks you what you thought of the movie. Take the full beat before you answer. Count it silently if you need to. 2 things are going to happen. First, you're going to discover just how long 3 seconds feels from the inside and how short it looks from the outside. Nobody's going to flinch. Most people won't even notice except that your answer got better. Second, you're going to start collecting evidence, actual lived evidence that the silence didn't kill anyone. That evidence is what your nervous system needs before it will let you use the pause when the stakes are real. You can't talk yourself into trusting silence. You have to catch yourself surviving it over and over until your body updates the file. Let's pull it together. The belief we walked in with says silence is awkward and weak, and command means filling the room. The research says the pause makes you think better and makes outcomes better on both sides of the table. The mechanism underneath it all is state. An unregulated speaker can't pause. They can only fill, which means the pause is a regulation skill that shows up in your speaking, and that's why we train the body before we polish the words. 3 rests written into your score, all aimed at the same 3 seconds the research keeps pointing to. The set pause before the sentence that matters, hard news or the best news, so it comes from a settled body and lands in bold type. The catch pause after their question, so you answer what was actually asked. The land pause after your key line, so the sentence gets to finish its work. And underneath all 3, one truth. The pause isn't silence. It's the sound of a regulated nervous system. When you can stand in a quiet room at full attention with your heart rate steady and your mouth closed, you are broadcasting something no fast answer can fake. Everyone in that room can hear it, even though no one can point to it. Which brings me back to the television news interview. Here's the thing about the dead air rule. It was right. For radio, on a broadcast signal, silence really does mean something's broken because the medium is the sound. But somewhere along the way, I let a rule built for transmitters write the rules for my conversations. And in a conversation, the medium is the connection. Silence, handled well, is part of the signal. Sometimes it's the strongest part. So I've got another interview coming up this week, and I already know that somewhere in it, a beautiful, useful gap is going to open up, and every fiber of 30 years of training is going to lunge for it. Some days I catch it, some days the old wiring wins. I'm telling you that on purpose because the pause is a choice we make one rest at a time for the rest of our speaking lives. I'm still making it every single time. 2 things before you go. First, get the pause field guide. 2 pages, all 3 pauses, the training wheels line, the daily drill, and a 1-week plan to build your tolerance from 1 second to a full 4. It's free at daledixon.me/pause. That's daledixon.me/pause. Second, think of one specific person, the leader you know who answers questions before they're finished being asked, the colleague who talks past their own ask in every negotiation, the friend who fills every gap in every meeting and can't figure out why the room never talks back. Send them this episode. It's not a hint, it's a hand. You might be giving them the 3 seconds that change how they lead. I'm Dale Dixon. This is the Presence Lab. I'll see you in the next one.